All right, if you have your Bible, tonight we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. And we're going to start tonight by taking a little journey through an illustration. I want you to imagine walking into a jewelry store. Some of you have done this in your life. And you know, jewelry stores are really good. They're really good at the displays there, so that when you walk in, there are certain things, generally the most expensive, right, that capture your attention, right? Something, the sparkling of the diamonds, right, it kind of catches your eye. And then you walk over and you say, hey, jeweler, I don't know what you call him, Dan, I don't know, Chuck, right? You say, hey, can I see that diamond? And what do they often do? Oftentimes, if you have a really good jeweler, what they do is they pull the ring out, but then they take some sort of velvet, probably black velvet, and they lay it down, and then they put the ring or the necklace on top of that black velvet. And you think about that, and when you just say that out loud, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Because you think that if you were looking at a diamond, you would want to hold it up to the light, right, and see the light shining through and all that. But really, if you think about what that guy is doing, is he's real clever, right? These salesmen, they're real clever, right? Because what he's doing is he's taking that beautiful diamond that's illuminated by the light, and by putting it on this dark surface, what it does is in our eyes, that light and the contrast with that dark surface, it makes that diamond twinkle just a little bit brighter. Right? It makes it catch our eye just a little bit more, right? And so it's real clever how they use the contrast of the colors and the lightings and the buildings and the design to really bring out the brilliance of that diamond. And we call those sorts of things, like putting a bright, beautiful diamond on a dark backdrop, we call those things paradox in the world that we live in. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, Solomon is bringing a paradox to us, not of diamonds, but of something else. He's painting a picture that seems a little bit crazy because he's talking about wisdom and he's talking about life and he's talking about priorities, but instead of talking about those things and the ease and comfort that those things bring to life, he instead talks about wisdom and life and priorities, and he kind of contrasts them with the harsh realities of life, with the fact that there's sorrow, right? With the fact that there's death, with the fact that there's challenges in the world. And why does he do that? Well, the same reason that man puts that diamond on that dark backdrop, right? Because if you think about wisdom, you think about life, and you think about priorities, and you contrast those things with death and sorrow and suffering, it makes those things shine just a little bit brighter, right? And compared to if I just said wisdom and life and priorities, and we think about how that wisdom, it brings ease to our life, it makes things a little bit easier, it doesn't shock the conscience, right? It doesn't hit us in a way that really challenges our thinking. And so Solomon, in his great wisdom, is bringing this description of wisdom and putting it on the backdrop of the things that it shouldn't be on, that we, in our mind anyway, think, like death, sorrow, and challenges. And I want to give you another illustration before we get to the text tonight, because it kind of brings this home even further. There's a pastor who shared a story about going to 2 funerals in the same week. At the first funeral, it was a man who lived kind of a life that revolved around himself. His life, he was chasing after everything that he wanted, right? Pleasure, wealth, all of that stuff. But his relationships and his legacy were not good, right? His relationships were broken. His legacy was a legacy of broken relationships with a lot of money, right? And then the other funeral he went to was for a godly woman whose life was marked by faith and kindness and service. Now, she didn't live an extravagant life. She didn't have a lot of money. She lived very modestly. But what this pastor was shocked by is the testimonies that were shared at each one. Right? He heard the testimonies of gratitude and love and inspiration at this young woman, or not young, but this woman's funeral. And then he thought about, man, how different is her legacy and her testimony than this guy's funeral I just went to that was marked by really a lot of tension and a lot of anger and all this stuff. But he had all this elaborate, right? He had all the stuff, right? He had all the things that you think would make you happy and successful. And as the pastor thought about those things, he was reminded of a text in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 that one of the ones we're going to talk about tonight. It says this: the day of death is better than the day of birth. It's not about the quantity of years that we live. It's about the quality of wisdom and character we bring to light. And that's really where this pastor got stuck in all this. He thought, man, you have this one guy who had all the quality, right? He had all the stuff. And then you have this lady who had none of the stuff, but she had the quantity of life. But here's the thing where it kind of struck him. He said, but somehow, this lady who lived all these years and didn't really have anything, she's the one that left an imprint on the world. This guy who had everything, his imprint is, everything is broken. So the pastor's perplexed by this. He's like, man, this is crazy. This is a paradox, right? These two things that seem like they should be the other way around, right? In reality, a real world example, people like Elon Musk should be leaving an incredible thumbprint on the world, right? Because they have all the resources in the world to make a real difference. And at some level, they do, right? At least a little bit. But at the end of the day, the people that have most impacted the world are people that we don't even know their names, right? If I told you the people that impacted my world, you would never know that, you would not know who they are. But the thing about it is that they radically changed the way that I think about things, the way that I live my life, because of the way they reflected Christ to me. They didn't have anything. None of them were rich. That I can promise you, right? None of them had all the money in the world, right? But they had a right perspective. They had quality, and most of them had quantity, and they had quality of wisdom and character. So I want you to hear kind of what Solomon says in contrasting really the difference, right? The difference in the ways that we can live in this world. A good name, this is Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 1. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It's better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than hear the song of fools. For as the cackling of thorns under a pot, cackling too, so is the laughter of fools. This is also vanity. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. Say not, why were their former days better than these? For it's not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. In that first verse, Solomon says a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. Now, these are those paradoxes I'm talking about, right? Because in our human rationale, when we hear that, we think that's crazy, right? It's crazy to say that the day we die is better than the day we're born, right? That's bizarre, right? And it's even, I would say, maybe even more bizarre than that paradox is the one he gives us first. A good name is better than precious ointment, right? That's a weird thing to say, right? I don't know if you know that, but that's kind of a weird way of putting it. But what he's doing is he's using a metaphor to bring contrast, right? He's using two valuable things to bring a contrast between reputation, right, a good name, and luxury. Right? You see where there's a contrast already. Right? Would you rather have a good name or would you rather have the finer things in life? A good name is built through integrity, through character, through wisdom. A good name has lasting value, right? And we know that because guess what? A precious ointment runs out, right? If you got rough feet, you go to the store, you buy a tub of foot juice. I don't know what it's called, so foot juice is what it comes out as. I don't have this written down, so this is for free. But you buy that, you put it on for a few weeks, and then what happens? Eventually, you go to dip your hand in there to put the foot juice on, and it's gone. That's so gross. I don't know why foot juice is the way it came out, but I feel like I have to go with it now because it's out there. But it runs out, right? It has value, but its value is what? It's limited. You know what? A good name has limitless value. Limitless value. Because you have two things that in one way or another are important in the world that we live in. But just because they're important doesn't mean they're equal, right? And that's where we kind of that's where things go sideways for us a lot of times, is we think because two things are valuable, they have equal value, right? But the truth of the matter is that's never the case. There are things in my life that are valuable, but one is far more valuable than others, right? And so we understand that. Solomon is kind of pointing to that, and he does it by sort of this practical example of reputation and luxury, and then he goes to sort of the other side of this, the way other side of it, and says the day of death is it's better, is essentially what he's saying, than the day of birth. Why does he say that? Because the day of death gives perspective. Now, if you've ever seen someone born, like someone brings their precious newborn in, right? That baby, it stirs within you certain feelings, right? But it doesn't cause you to ask the really deep questions of life. But when somebody's in a casket in front of you, that's when you ask the really important questions. Like, man, I'm going to be there one day, right? When you're holding that baby, you're like, oh, I'm going to be there. You don't say, oh, look, I'm going to be there one day. No, you don't say that, right? You're like, oh, we're celebrating this gift of life. But when somebody dies, you look at that situation, you say, man, I'm headed in the same direction, right? I'm headed to the same place, right? They're going to put me in the ground one day. And so we start asking the really deep questions, the questions that matter in life when we experience the reality of death. And the truth of the matter is, at death, a person's life's meaning and impact is when all of it gets revealed. Right? Because a lot of times in this life, we don't tell people as much as we should how much they mean to us, how much they've impacted our life. We just don't do that, right? We don't do it as much as we should. But when people are gone, some of the things that I've heard people say about people who have passed are incredible. Incredible. The impact that they had in people's lives around them. I mean, incredible things. And so I guess death kind of reveals that person's true meaning, right, and true impact. And birth is really kind of the underwriting for everything, right? It's kind of like the beginning. And so it's like, hey, like I trust that this baby's going to go on to do great things, right? But we really don't know the impact that child is going to have. We know they're going to have an impact, but we don't know the extent of that impact. But when a person is gone, we know, right? We know the depth of really where they've touched people's life. And so we remember the legacy that they've left behind. We remember at that moment and we start to question. I've heard this in real life. People ask questions of themselves about their character, about their influence that they have over other people. Right? I can't tell you how many times I'm talking with someone who's lost someone, and they're like, man, the impact that my mom or my grandma or granddad, the impact they had on the lives of this family are incredible. And they start asking questions. Am I leaving the same impact in my family? Those are important questions, folks. Maybe some of the most important questions, right? But you don't ask that when that person was born. It's when they die. And so Solomon is tapping into that, into us and who we are in the reality of our situation and circumstances to see these things. It's better to go to the house of mourning and go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Mourning is something we like to avoid in this life. No one likes to be sad, right? No one, even the people that I know are in heaven, right? No doubt they're in heaven. I don't wake up when it's time for their funeral and say, yes, right? Woohoo, I get to go preach their funeral today. No one does that, right? Even if you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? The testimony of their life paints a clear picture. No one does that. And so we like to avoid mourning, but the truth of the matter is mourning brings more clarity than anything else, right? Again, because we start asking those important questions. We are reminded in mourning about the fact that we have a purpose and that life is short, right? Those are the two things. Guaranteed, if you're at a funeral, at some point, something is going to be said or someone's going to say something to you, and one of those two things, if not both of them, is going to be brought to your mind at some point, at some level, about what is my purpose in this life, and, man, this life is passing by real fast. On the other side of this is feasting, right, that he's talking about. Going to a feast, which is enjoyable, right? But really, feasting is in what Solomon is contrasting here. Feasting is the other side of this. Because at feasting, what do we want to do? We want to be fat and happy, right? I want to have to put my stretchy pants on, right? I don't really have stretchy pants. Rachel says that. I thought it would work for me, but it didn't. It just sounded awkward. So ignore that. But right, we want to be fat and happy, right? We want to forget the distractions. We want to feast. We want to eat, drink, and be merry, right? Solomon says this is the end of all mankind. Not the feasting, but the mourning. I don't know if you know this or not, but death is the destiny of all of us, right? If the Lord tarries in his coming, we will die. And it's our destiny, right? Meaning that we're not going to change that, right? We're not going to escape that reality. Death is coming, right? But the living lay heart to it. What does that mean? It means we confront that reality. It means that as the people of God specifically, that Solomon points to as those who have this thing kind of under wraps, at least a little bit, but not completely. He says we're reflecting on the reality of our mortality. And so what does that do? That encourages us to live intentionally. Right? Think of it like this. If you went to the doctor tomorrow and they told you you have 5 years to live, you're going to live different than you are now, right? 100%. But imagine they say this. You have 24 hours to live. You are going to live drastically different in 24 hours than you would in that 5 years. Why? Because perspective drives us to live even more intentionally so that our priorities become aligned with eternal values. Because I can tell you, the people that I have not really been good at sharing the gospel with in my family, if I went to the doctor tomorrow and they told me I had 24 hours to live, I'm about to Billy Graham like nobody's business, right? I'm about to get on the phone, and I may be on the phone for 24 hours until I breathe my last, because there's people in my family that I got something to say to, right? And they need to know, because I don't know if they're going to have another chance, right? It causes us, it drives us to live differently. Why? Because when we are faced with the reality of mortality, it reminds us that life is passing by, right? and this is true for me. I felt 40 last week, and I turned 41, and I feel 80, right? I don't know where everything else went, but that one day and that 1 week changed my life, right? I went to a concert, my ears were ringing. At 10 o'clock, I was tired and ready to go home, and the main act wasn't even on yet, right? But that's how it works, right? As we face the reality that years and days and months and minutes are passing by, we are constantly faced with as I preach more and more funerals, I'm faced with the reality that this thing is ticking away. That I'm not going to be here forever. That you're not going to be here forever. And what does that cause us to do? Again, it causes us to live more intentionally. Because I don't know. The truth is, you don't know. Why would the doctor telling you have 24 hours cause you to live differently? Because I'm telling you right now, you don't know that you have the next 24 hours. That's a fact, folks. You don't know that you have the next 24 seconds. None of us do. So why does it take that? Why does it take that sort of news to drive us to live different? Our perspective. When you understand that we are all running in the same direction, and we're gonna all, if the Lord tarries in us coming, we're gonna end up in the grave. At least our bodies will. Our bodies are gonna end up in the grave. But when you realize that time is running out, you're gonna live different. And I would encourage you, and what Solomon is encouraging us to do here, is why would you wait till the doctor tells you? Why would you wait till someone tells you that this thing is over? God already told you. He just told you, right? Through Solomon, hey, this thing is ticking away. So it doesn't matter if you're 20, 40, 60, 80. The truth is, nowhere, you can't turn to anywhere in Scripture and tell me that Kai has more time left than I do. You can't. Because guess what? We're not writing the story. Right? He and I don't know that. The truth is, I could be gone long from this world before I see Stan or Rich or Tom or Josh or any of you in eternity. I could be long gone from this place. Solomon wants us to face the reality of this world with wisdom, and wisdom that says whether I have 20 minutes left or I have 20 years left or I have 200 years left on this planet, I'm going to live it intentionally, and my eyes are going to be fixed where? Not under the sun, but heavenward. My eyes are going to be fixed on that which matters. Because sorrow is better than laughter. For by sadness of face, the heart is made glad. Now, Solomon isn't dismissing joy. Let me tell you this. I have never once in my life faked being sad. But I'm also not going to lie to you tonight. There have been many times that I have laughed at people's jokes, and I have laughed, and it was fake. You can fake laughter, and you can fake joy, but you cannot fake sadness. You can't do it. You see, laughter can be shallow. It can be. We can laugh to mask the deeper issues that are going on in our life. But sorrow, when you're truly in sorrow, what does it do? It drives you deep, right? It drives you into your heart. And you start looking inward and you start thinking about everything that's right here. And so, in Solomon's perspective, sorrow refines the quality, right? Sorrow causes us to ask those really important questions. Sorrow shapes our heart. Sorrow is what deepens our understanding of life, right? Because it's through trials and tribulations that we become resilient, right? Right? You ever seen someone whose life constantly is going good, and then something happens? What is their response? Right? It is absurd, right? It's over the top. The world is ending, right? And my life is over. It's gone. Everything is gone. It's over. You think about somebody who's fought the battle of this life, who's been in the trenches all the days of their life, and what happens when something bad comes along? I got it. It's going to be all right. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, right? And there's resilience in them. Now, they're empathetic, absolutely, right? They look at that guy who's over the top, ooh, and they're empathetic to it. It's a teaching moment. But at the end of the day, not only are they resilient, they have gratitude. Some of the most gracious people in the world are those who've been through the trenches. Those who've gone through the trials and the tribulations of this life. Painful experiences, even though they are unpleasant and about as far from fun as you can imagine. It's the painful experience that really produce within us spiritual and emotional growth. You may grow on the mountaintop, but nothing grows you more than being in the valley, right? When God is bringing you through it, right? That's when growth really happens. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. Listen, it's going back to what he just said. The wise are in the house of mourning. Why? Because they're pursuing the deeper things, the things that matter, right? Listen, in this world, money doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You can run all the days of your life after money and stuff, and you're going to die, and your money and stuff first goes to the court, and then the court decides who they want to give it to, and then they're going to take half, right? That's the way this thing works. So imagine this. You pour your blood, sweat, and tears into making money and building a kingdom. And the moment you breathe your last, you think, I'm leaving a legacy to my family. And then the moment you breathe your last, half of it gone. To who? I don't know. Joe Biden, I guess. No, I'm kidding. It just goes. It's just gone. The government takes the tax, right? After you tax to death, literally, on all of it, they tax you again, right? They take it, and it's gone. And then the people who it goes to, likely, they've worked their life, but they haven't earned it. And they're going to get it, and they're going to do whatever they want to with it. But if you have raised people to understand that the wise are in the house of mourning, when you raise people to think on the deeper things and in deeper ways, it creates more responsible, reasonable, resilient human beings. You want to know why the world's in the shape that it's in right now? With all these namby-pamby people walking around, they need a safe space, right? Because someone won't call them a tuna fish sandwich, right? You want to know why we're in that space, in that spot? Because we have raised generations in the house of feasting, not in the house of mourning. We've never challenged them to ask the hard questions, right? We want to lay this silver platter out before them and say, everything is here, right here. We don't want to send them through the fire. We don't want to send them through the trial. We want everything to be different than it was for me. Why? The only reason that you would want the people you love to have a different life than you is because you're miserable. But if God has moved in you and God has created in you a mature Christian who loves the Lord with all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength, your prayer should be, God, take my kids through what you took me through so that they would be faithful, godly, God-honoring Christian men and women. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Because easy times create weak people. And weak people create hard times, and hard times create strong people. Believe it or not, God told us this is the way it works. We reap what we sow. We need to be wise. And it doesn't mean that we're just walking around, oh, we're not Eeyore either, right? Wise in the house of mourning doesn't mean like, oh, shucks, I got to get up again and go to work at this job I hate, and I'm going to do it for the glory of the Lord, right? And I'm going to pay my mortgage for the glory of the Lord. And it doesn't mean we act like that either. But the joy of the Lord is our strength. What Solomon says here is in the paradox of this life, yeah, we do things we don't like. Yeah, absolutely we do. But all of these things should drive us right here into our hearts To say, man, I understand that where I'm at right now is not where I want to be, but I don't have to stay there. You see the difference in I don't have to stay there. The other side of it is, man, I don't like where I'm at, so I'm just going to stand here and I'm going to complain on Facebook about my boss every day that I can and hope that they never friend me on Facebook and see all the bad things I've said about them, right? Those are two different perspectives, right, of life. And so we have to be a people who are wise and use that wisdom to drive us to a place of deep questioning and introspection. Right? We need to ask the hard questions. Foolish people say yes to everything, right? The wisest people in the world are those who have learned to say no. That's wisdom, right? We do what we can, and we don't do what we can't do, right? I mean, if I would do anything in the world for my mom, but if my mom came to me tomorrow and said, hey, I need a $10,000 loan, I'm going to say, yeah, me too, right? I don't even have that much. I mean, I have credit, but I ain't not enough to give that much, right? Why? Because I understand the reality of the world that we live in. There are things that I can do that I will always say yes to. And there are things that I can't do, that I can't say yes to. And when you do, boy, you know, right? Because all of a sudden, it's like somebody hit the cosmic toilet handle, right? And everything starts spinning out of control, right? We know that. We've seen that in our life. Every one of us, I'm sure, in one way or another, we've seen that. But that deep introspection, that looking inward, those deep moments, that thinking from a godly perspective, it refines us, it shapes us, it deepens even our understanding of Him. It's better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. This is absolutely true, and I don't even know how to say it any better. I would much rather someone rebuke me in the love of the Lord because of the benefit that it has than to listen to you yap about how great of a sermon that was or how I'm doing a great job as a pastor, right? If you never call me out, if I say something crazy, I would rather you say to me, Jay and I were talking about this recently, I was like, I'd rather somebody say something to me. Like, hey bro, that was a little weird, right? I would rather you say that to me so that I can go back and watch it and realize what I said. And I may say to you, you know what? You're right. That was weird. Now I got to get on Facebook and YouTube and everything else and apologize because I can't take it back. It's out in the world, right? But we own that sort of stuff. But it's better to hear someone rebuke you in the name of making you better than it is to hear someone praise you in your stupidity. Do you know how many people I've seen their life ruin because their family chose to praise them in their stupidity instead of rebuking them in the love of the Lord? Instead of saying, hey, you know the decisions you're making are wrong. You know what you're doing is hurting the heart of God, but it's hurting the heart of your family too. Man, in this world that we live in, the world that we live in is if you just say enough good stuff to them, maybe they'll eventually buy into it and they're going to be all right. And so what do we have? We have all these namby-pamby people walking around here who've got nothing but encouragement their whole life, and now they don't know how to fail, right? And so when they do, their world is shaken to the core. And you know what? In the church, you know what those people do? Walk away. They walk away. Because they don't understand the reality of this world that we live in. In this world, you will have tribulation. We leave that part out and we'll say, but take heart, because Jesus overcame the world, right? And He's made you more than a conqueror. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you conquer every time. Sometimes it takes you getting knocked down many, many times before you realize that you can get back up. Right? It's a paradox. That I've been made more than a conqueror, but I got to learn what that is? I got to learn how to do that? Yeah. You mean in this world I'm going to have tribulation, but Christ has overcome for me? Yeah. But you got to know it. You got to believe it. You got to live in light of it. You got to believe that it's actually true. Because a lot of stuff sounds good on paper. Policy, right? When I used to write policy for the police department, everything sounded good on paper. And then you had to thump some knucklehead in the forehead on a traffic stop, and all of a sudden that policy that looked good on paper has caused you a whole lot of problems, right? Because everything looks good in a well-lit office where the temperature is just right and there's no outside distractions and everything is right there in front of you, right? But in the world, man, that thing that looked good right there may not be so good when you're out in the world. If we only hear things from this limited corner office, then our perspective is going to be so jaded by the songs of fools that we're never going to learn how to take the rebuke of God and of our brothers and sisters. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fools. This is vanity. Have you ever thrown thorns into a fire? You know what that's like? It's what happens. They pop, they make this noise, but what happens? It's over fast, right? Once they pop, it's done. No more, right? Solomon says that's what this is like. It's like throwing thorns in a fire, right? It's pop and it's done. And he says that's the laughter of fools. You can listen to them, but that wisdom is going to go about as far as you can throw it. Right? When push comes to shove and the rubber meets the road, that sort of folly is going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart. Why? Because it's empty. He says it's vanity. It's empty. The laughter of fools is empty. True wisdom, then, is deeper reflection. It's solutions that endure beyond the moment. It's solutions that endure beyond the moment. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness. A bribe corrupts the heart. You know that even the wise can be overwhelmed by injustice and oppression. There's no doubt about that. And the truth of the matter is, when you are in a prolonged way exposed to garbage and to corruption and to hardship, it will lead you to a place of frustration. It will. It can. In bribery, Solomon uses it in the same vein to show us moral compromise, right? A lack of integrity. Even someone wise can be tempted to trade principles for personal gain. It happens all the time in this world. People fall. People who have integrity have moments that lack integrity. They have moments that damages their character and their trust. And so what do? We have to guard our wisdom. We have to guard our wisdom against these corrupting things in this world. We have to withstand the external pressures and the internal pressures. So with wisdom and resilience comes vigilance. We understand that discipline and accountability are for our spiritual good. We understand that there are things in this world that bring distractions to our life that don't bring value. Right? We understand those sorts of things. And he says in verse 8, better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Listen, this doesn't take rocket science to figure out. In light of everything he's already said, better is the end of a thing than its beginning. Why? Because then you know its value. You know, one of the things when I was growing up as a kid, I really loved my stuff. But I really, really loved my stuff when it was gone. Right? Like that toy that I always wanted, I loved it for 15 seconds, and then it was under my bed for 40 years. And then I pull it out 40 years later and throw it in the trash. And as soon as the trash gets taken away, it's like I've lost my best friend, right? It's like that thing, right? That thing that I wanted for so long, that I said had value, that I never even dealt with, right? For 40 years. Now that it's gone, it has value, right? The end of it is where I realized the true value and the memories that were attached to that, right? The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Well, duh, right? I mean, of course, it's better for us to represent and live with a spirit of patience. You want to know why? I don't know if you know this about yourself, but I can guarantee you this is true, is that you're messed up. Like, I can guarantee, take it to the bank. You have sin in your life. You got problems. Guess what? I wake up every morning, look at my ugly mug in the mirror, and I got the same thing. I got the same problems, right? We all are on the same page. We all are messed up. We're all going to have to be patient with each other because you're going to make decisions in your life that I don't like. I'm going to make decisions you don't like. I'm going to make decisions leading the church that you don't like. And I'm just going to ask you to be patient, right? And trust that God is going to use my good decisions for His glory, and God is going to use my lacking decisions for His glory to teach me and to teach you, right? Because patience is a quality that comes with wisdom, right? Patient people are the most wise people, right? Because they know when to take something to heart and be changed by it and when to just let it be water off a duck's back, right? They know how to do that. And He says, be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for angry lodges in the hearts of fools. Again, of course. Of course. Don't be quick to run to anger. Fools do that. They don't think through things, right? They don't think through consequences. They don't think through realities. They just run to that first moment of emotions, and that's what they hold on to. And when you have anger that isn't addressed the right way, let me just tell you this for free, that will take root and it will destroy you and your relationships. You want to know some of the most miserable people in the world? Angry people. Most miserable in the world. Why? Because anger is a destructive emotion when it is not dealt with the right way. It gives way to bitterness. It gives way to foolish decisions, right? I can't tell you how many people I arrested in my career that I arrested them because, and I've told them this, because in their heart they were angry, and what they did was not a result of the situation. What they did was a result of anger and bitterness that was in their heart. The situation could have gone much differently, but it didn't. And it wasn't because the other person was a knucklehead, but it was because they had unresolved anger in their own life and in their own heart, and bitterness had taken root. And so they made foolish decisions born out of that anger. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it's not wisdom that you ask this. Now, this one kind of stings a little bit in the spirit of honesty, because I've done this in my own life more than once. When you start thinking back to the way things used to be, right? Where things were comfortable, right? Where things were kind of going your way. Maybe they weren't going, you don't care about everybody else, but they were going your way, right? And you think about those times, and you're like, man, back in the day, right? Way back when life was good and easy and all this, right? In 19-something, right? When things were better, what does Solomon say? That's not from wisdom. You know, the reality of Scripture over and over again is wisdom never focuses on the past. Now, wisdom is shaped by the past, right? Because we learn. We make mistakes. But Kai and I were talking today. You know what I can do to change what happened yesterday? Nothing. Nothing. Even if I go and apologize for what happened yesterday, for people I hurt yesterday, I don't think I did, but let's just say for the sake of argument, even if I go back and apologize, does that ever really heal the hurt? Let me tell you something. I think apologizing is important, but for a second, I understand that every time someone has hurt me and apologized, it took me a minute. Right? I didn't say, all right, chap, let's go have some coffee. No. I'm like, I appreciate it. Now get out of my face. No, I say I appreciate it. I do. I genuinely appreciate that. But it takes time. But you know what I never say? man, I just wish we could go back to the way it was before. Because why would we say that? Why would we not want to learn and grow from the hard times? The fighting, excuse me, I'm getting excited, I'm throwing stuff. Why would we not want to learn from the things that are hard in our life and become better people because of it? Because guess what? When we fight, we learn. We learn forgiveness, we learn grace and mercy and all of those things. And so why would I look at the situation and say, man, if I could just go back and change something? If you could, so what? Really, if you could go back and make that decision over again, what changes? And I can tell you the answer to that every time. You don't know. And you can't change it, right? So why live there? Fools live there. Fools always want to change what's already happened and never want to move in a different direction. They always want to stay planted in fixing everything I've done in the past. Listen, I've made terrible decisions in my life. There are things that people have done to me in my life, right, that hurt, that wounded me. For 41 years, that wounded me. But the truth of the matter is even if they came and apologized to me right now, it's not going to undo my hurt. It's not going to change the 40 years that I've had. And so what do? I look back at those things and say, man, it stinks that this happened. But you know what? God made me a better person because of it. He made me a stronger person because of it. Because now I realize how much words and actions truly hurt other people. And I don't want to do that to other people. So we learn, we become better, right? Because nostalgia distorts reality. There's not a time you can go back to where everything is going to be fixed. Because if you go back in time, if you could take a time machine today, you would go back and fix one thing, and then you would make another dumb decision and do something else, right? Because you're in flesh, right? That's sinful. And so we can't change that. It doesn't mean, though, that we never attempt to reconcile and fix the things that we've done in the past. Like if I hurt someone in the past, I would certainly want to go to them and make that right, but understanding that it's going to take time. Right? If I hurt Miss Connie by something I did, I would never expect that to happen on a Sunday and go to her on a Monday all chummy like everything is fine. No, I would go and say, I'm so sorry for what I said. I know that it hurt you, and I'm so sorry. And you know what I would do? I'd keep loving her the best I can, knowing that I've done everything I can to reconcile that, and knowing that it's going to take time. What is that, folks? That's wisdom. It's wisdom. It causes you to go here, to look at the deep, deep part of things, to know that it's not just about me and how I feel and what I think, but I'm living and moving and breathing in this world with other people who matter, with my neighbor, who God tells me to love as myself. Wisdom is a good inheritance and advantage to those who see the sun. You know what those who see the sun means? If you're alive. Wisdom is a good inheritance for those who are alive. That makes sense, right? Because unless you write a book, when you're dead, you're not imparting a whole lot of wisdom. If you are, we have a lot to talk about in counseling. But if you're alive and breathing and moving in this world, wisdom is a good inheritance to leave behind. It's a good inheritance. Material wealth, yeah, it's cool, right? I would love to be whatever Elon's kid's name is. He's just the richest person I can think of right now. But I would love to be X or whatever he named his kids that are weird. Like, I'm sure it would be really nice to inherit $1 bajillion, right? But at the end of the day, that $1 bajillion is going to run out. But wisdom doesn't run out. It doesn't run out, right? I'm not going to spend all the wisdom I have. Why? Because when it runs deep, you're always learning. You're becoming more and more wise. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Wisdom and wealth can offer some degree of security in this life. Wealth, of course, protects us against material hardship, right? But wisdom protects us through sound judgment, through navigating the difficulties of this life in a beneficial way. And so what Solomon is implying here is that wisdom offers a deeper and more lasting protection than money. Right? The advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Wisdom, according to Solomon, is life preserving. Money is not. It's just not. When you have wisdom, you are able to make decisions that aren't harmful to other people. You're able to manage risk in life. You're able to align your life with the will of God. Wisdom is the thing that endures. Wisdom is the thing that protects. Wisdom, especially when it's grounded in the fear of the Lord, is more valuable than anything else in this world. Wisdom. You want to know why? Because true wisdom leads you to faith. True wisdom leads you to belief that leads to gospel transformation. The greatest protection in all of the world is a God who saves and a God who keeps. Godly wisdom helps us avoid the foolishness of this life, and it helps us to value what truly matters, and that is our relationship with God and other people. That's the legacy you want to leave to your family. And if you can leave them a little money too, cool. But the truth of the matter is that if you leave them wisdom and what truly matters, then that is the greatest gift that you could ever give to someone. It's the greatest legacy you could ever leave. Any questions tonight from Ecclesiastes?